The great hall of Terminus Prime stretched beyond what most beings could see. Its walls were carved from the bones of extinct leviathans, each one larger than a starship. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, where the preserved skulls of conquered species hung like grim trophies. This was the heart of the Apex Dominion, where the galaxy's most feared predators gathered to decide the fate of lesser worlds. Commander Tyke stood at the center of the hall, his massive form casting long shadows across the polished floor. His scales caught the red light from the volcanic forges that burned eternally beneath the fortress. Each scale was harder than battle armor, forged by millions of years of evolution on Kethmoran, a world where survival meant enduring pressures. That would crush most starships. Tyke's eyes swept across the assembled representatives. These were not ordinary beings. These were the apex predators of the galaxy, each one the product of a deathworld so hostile that their very existence defied logic. To his left stood Young-Ho of the Titanforge Collective. The being's body glowed with internal heat, its skin appearing like molten metal barely contained in humanoid form. Young-Ho's people had evolved in the cores of dying stars, feeding on nuclear fire and breathing plasma. Their homeworld burned at temperatures that would vaporize most matter instantly. Across from Young-Ho, Yunji of the Void Hunters floated in her containment field. Her species had evolved in the cold emptiness between galaxies, where no light had ever shone, and the only food came from the death screams of civilizations. Her translucent body pulsed with dark energy, and her mere presence made reality bend slightly around her. Near the great doors, Minho represented the quantum devourers. His form flickered between dimensions, never quite solid, never quite there. His people existed partially outside normal space and time, feeding on the quantum foam that held the universe together. They could appear anywhere, consume anything, and disappear before their victims even knew they were under attack. These were the rulers of the galaxy. For 3,000 years, they had conquered every hostile world they encountered. They had faced creatures that breathed acid, beings made of living crystal, and nightmares that could phase through solid matter. Nothing had ever challenged their dominance. Lieutenant Jinwoo approached Tyke with careful steps. Even among the Vorthak, Jinwoo was considered dangerous. His body bore the scars of 100 battles, each one a testament to his survival instincts. But lately something had been troubling him. "Commander," Jinwoo said, his voice a low rumble that could be felt through the stone floor. "The latest reports from the outer sectors." Tyke took the datapad without looking at his lieutenant. His attention was focused on the holographic display that showed their empire. 847 worlds under their control. Each one had been conquered through superior strength and the absolute certainty that nothing in the galaxy could match them. "Another routine expansion?" Tyke asked, though his tone suggested he was not really interested in the answer. "Not exactly, sir." Jinwoo's hesitation was unusual. In Vorthak culture, hesitation was often the difference between life and death. "We have detected a new species on the galactic rim." The other representatives began to pay attention. New species were always interesting, either as potential slaves or as entertainment for the gladiator pits. Tyke finally looked at the report. The star system was unremarkable, tucked away in a quiet spiral arm where nothing of value had ever been found. The third planet showed signs of a developing civilization. Initial scans indicated they called themselves humans. "What classification?" Tyke asked. "The planet registers as Class 12 Deathworld, sir." A few of the assembled beings made sounds that might have been laughter. Class 12 was impressive by galactic standards, but these were beings who considered Class 20 worlds barely suitable for vacation homes. Young-Ho's internal fires flared brighter with amusement. "Class 12? My offspring play in Class 15 environments?" Yunji's dark energy pulsed with what passed for humor among her species. "The Void claims all worlds eventually. Class ratings are meaningless." But Jinwoo was not finished. "There is something unusual about their development pattern, Commander. They appear to have spread across their entire planet, including regions that should be uninhabitable even by Deathworld standards." Tyke's interest was barely stirred. Adaptation is common among successful species. We ourselves have conquered environments far more hostile than anything a Class 12 world could produce. The holographic display zoomed in on the human homeworld. It was a blue and green sphere, covered in what appeared to be vast oceans and diverse landmasses. From a distance it looked almost peaceful. Their technology appears primitive, Jinwoo continued. Chemical rockets, nuclear fission, basic electronics, but their expansion rate is unusual. They have established permanent settlements in environments, ranging from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts. Minho's form solidified enough to speak, his voice echoing from multiple dimensions at once. Primitive species often show remarkable adaptability before they encounter true predators. It is meaningless. Tyke nodded in agreement. Throughout their expansion, they had encountered thousands of species that appeared formidable on their homeworlds, but crumbled when faced with true apex predators. The pattern was always the same: initial resistance, desperate fighting, and then inevitable subjugation or extinction. What is their population? Tyke asked. Approximately 8 billion individuals across their homeworld, with smaller settlements on 2 neighboring planets and various artificial habitats. The number was impressive but not unprecedented. Large populations often developed on Deathworlds, where only strength in numbers could ensure survival. Military capabilities limited to their local system. No faster-than-light travel detected. Weapons appear to be primarily chemical and nuclear-based. Tyke dismissed the report with a gesture. Standard protocol applies. Send a reconnaissance fleet to assess their potential value as slaves or resources. If they prove troublesome, eliminate them. But Jinwoo did not move to carry out the order. His scarred face showed an expression that Tyke had rarely seen in his lieutenant uncertainty. Commander, there is one more thing. Our deep space sensors detected unusual energy signatures from their system. Nothing that matches known technology, but the patterns suggest they may be more advanced than initial scans indicate. For a moment, Tyke actually considered the possibility that these humans might present something more than routine conquest. But the moment passed quickly. In 3,000 years of expansion, they had never encountered a species that could truly challenge them. These humans were just another stepping stone in their inevitable domination of the galaxy. Your caution is noted, Lieutenant, but unnecessary. Schedule the reconnaissance mission for next cycle. If these humans prove interesting, we will study them. If not, we will add their world to our collection. The great hall began to empty as the representatives returned to their various domains. Each carried with them the casual certainty that had defined their rule for millennia. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, evolved on worlds where only the strongest could survive. None of them suspected that on a small blue world at the edge of nowhere, a species was preparing to change everything they thought they knew about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to be apex predators. As Jinwoo left the hall, he could not shake the feeling that they were making a mistake. Something about the human report troubled him in ways he could not articulate. But orders were orders, and the Apex Dominion had never been wrong before. The reconnaissance fleet would launch within days, carrying with it the absolute confidence of beings who had never met their equals. They would learn, perhaps too late, that in the vast darkness of space there were still surprises waiting. 6 months after the meeting on Terminus Prime, strange ships appeared at the edge of Vorthok space. The vessels looked primitive to eyes accustomed to the sleek death machines of the Apex Dominion. They were built from metal plates welded together, with visible seams. Engines that burned with controlled explosions pushed them through space at speeds that seemed almost quaint. Lieutenant Jinwoo commanded the Vorthok response fleet from his flagship, the Bone Crusher. His crew watched their sensors with growing confusion as the alien vessels maintained their course without any apparent fear. Most species turned and fled when they encountered Vorthok warships. These strangers kept coming. Sir, reported Sensor. Operator Sunho, the alien ships are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. It appears to be some kind of greeting. Jinwoo studied the tactical display. 5 human vessels against his fleet of 20 Vorthok battleships. The odds were so one-sided that it almost seemed unfair. Almost, what does the message say? Translation systems are working on it, sir. The language is completely unknown, but they seem to be requesting peaceful contact. A low growl rumbled through the bridge crew. Peaceful contact was a concept that amused the Vorthek. Peace was what happened after you had killed everything that opposed you. The lead human ship moved. Closer, its engines blazing with chemical fire. Jinwoo could see through his viewports that the vessel was smaller than his smallest escort ship, yet it approached with the confidence of a much larger force. "Open a channel," Jinwoo ordered. "Let us hear what these humans have to say before we crush them." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human vessel. The beings standing there looked fragile compared to the armored bulk of Vorthek warriors. They had pale skin, small teeth, and no visible natural weapons. Their leader stepped forward and spoke in a voice that the translation system rendered into Vorthek speech patterns. "I am Captain Solman of the human exploration vessel New Horizon. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Several of Jinwoo's crew made sounds that passed for laughter among their species. Friendship was another alien concept. You either dominated or were dominated. There was no middle ground. "I am Lieutenant Jinwoo of the Vorthek Empire," he replied, his voice carrying the natural menace that made lesser species tremble. "You have entered our territory without permission. Surrender your vessels and prepare to be processed." Captain Soman tilted her head slightly, as if confused by the demand. "We were not aware this space was claimed. Our sensors show no inhabited worlds or stations in this region. Perhaps we could discuss the matter." "There is nothing to discuss. You will surrender or be destroyed." The human captain was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a strange quality that Jinwoo could not identify. It was not fear, but something else. Something that made him slightly uncomfortable. "We would prefer to avoid conflict," Captain Salmon said. "But we will defend ourselves if necessary." Before Jinwoo could respond to this impossible statement, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. The bridge crew scrambled to their stations as emergency lights bathed everything in red. "Solar flare incoming," sensor operator Sunho reported. "Massive energy discharge from the local star. All ships are ordered to emergency shielding positions." This was a standard hazard of space travel. Stars were unpredictable, and even the mighty Vorthak had learned to respect their power. Jinwoo watched as his fleet moved into defensive formations, their shields glowing with protective energy. The wave of stellar radiation struck both fleets with tremendous force. Jinwoo felt his ship shudder as systems overloaded and backup power kicked in. Several of his escort vessels reported minor damage to their sensor arrays and communication systems. "Fleet status report," Jinwoo demanded. "All ships functional, sir. Minor system damage across the fleet. We should be able to resume operations within the hour." Jinwoo nodded and turned his attention back to the human ships. He expected to see them either destroyed or badly damaged by the solar flare. What he saw instead made him pause. The human vessels were continuing on their course as if nothing had happened. Their engines burned just as brightly as before. Their hulls showed no signs of damage. "Scan the human ships," Jinwoo ordered. "How much damage did they take?" Sunho worked at his console for several minutes before looking up with confusion. "Sir, their ships show no damage at all. In fact, our sensors indicate they barely activated any additional shielding. This was impossible. Solar flares of that magnitude could cripple starships that were not properly protected. Yet these primitive vessels had sailed through the radiation. As if it was nothing more than a gentle breeze, the communication channel reopened, and Captain Soman appeared on the screen again. She looked completely calm and untroubled. "Are your ships undamaged?" she asked with what seemed like genuine concern. "That was quite a solar event. We deal with similar radiation bursts when traveling through our home system's asteroid belts." Jinwoo stared at the human captain. She was talking about stellar radiation the way his people might discuss a minor weather disturbance. Either these humans were incredibly lucky, or their ships were far more advanced than they appeared. "Our vessels are functional," he replied. Carefully. How did your ship survive the flare without additional shielding? Our hulls are designed to handle radiation, Captain Salmon explained as if it was obvious. We have to pass through our planet's magnetic field regularly, and space around our homeworld has quite a bit of energetic particle activity. The more she talked, the more confused Jinwoo became. These humans spoke of navigating dangerous radiation fields as if it was a routine part of travel. Their ships were built to withstand punishment that would cripple most vessels in the galaxy. Perhaps we could meet in person, Captain Salmon suggested. My ship has docking facilities, or we could shuttle over to yours. We have some gifts from our homeworld that we would like to share. Gifts, another concept that rarely appeared in Vorthek culture. You took what you wanted by force. You did not give things away freely. Against his better judgment, Jinwoo found himself curious about these strange beings. Their technology was clearly more advanced than it appeared, but their behavior was unlike any species he had encountered. Very well, he said finally, you may dock with my flagship. But understand that any hostile action will result in the immediate destruction of your fleet. Of course, Captain Salmon replied with what might have been a smile. We look forward to meeting you. An hour later, Jinwoo stood in his ship's main docking bay as the human shuttle arrived. The craft was small and seemed to be built more for function than intimidation. When the airlock opened, 3 humans stepped out. The first was Captain Salmon, who looked even smaller in person than she had on the screen. Behind her came a tall human male who introduced himself as Commander Minjin, and a female called Diplomat Hygiene. What struck Jinwoo immediately was their calm confidence. They showed no fear of being surrounded by Vorthek warriors who could tear them apart with their bare hands. Instead, they looked around with obvious curiosity and interest. Your ship is impressive, Captain Salmon said, examining the bone-carved walls and weapon displays. The craftsmanship is remarkable. Diplomat Hygiene stepped forward with a sealed container. We brought some items from our homeworld. We hope you will find them interesting. She opened the container to reveal several objects. A small plant in a clear container, some bound papers covered with human writing, and a small device that began producing sounds when she activated it. This is a flowering plant from our world, Hygiene explained. These are examples of our literature, and this contains recordings of our music. Jinwoo examined the plant with growing unease. His ship's sensors immediately identified dozens of chemical compounds in its structure. Most of them would be lethal to galactic species. Yet the humans handled it without protection. The literature was even more disturbing. The translation system worked quickly, revealing stories that describe human activities in casual terms. Climbing mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. Swimming in waters cold enough to freeze blood. Exploring caves filled with poisonous gases, but it was the music that truly unsettled him. The sound spoke of emotions he barely understood, love and loss, hope in the face of despair. The determination to continue fighting even when victory seemed impossible. These were not the thoughts of a predator species. These were the thoughts of something else entirely. Something that might be far more dangerous than any apex predator the galaxy had ever known. As the cultural exchange continued, Jinwoo began to realize that his initial assessment of humanity might have been completely wrong. 3 weeks after the first contact incident, the Galactic Council demanded answers. Commander Tyke stood before the assembled representatives of the Apex Dominion, his confidence shaken by Lieutenant Jinwoo's disturbing report about the humans. A full assessment expedition will be organized, announced Young Ho of the Titanforge Collective. His molten form pulsed with authority. We must understand what we are dealing with before making any decisions about these humans. Linji of the Void Hunters floated in her containment field, dark energy swirling around her translucent body. If they pose a threat, we eliminate them. If they do not, we enslave them. This is the way it has always been. But Minho of the Quantum Devourers flickered between dimensions as he spoke. Something about their behavior patterns suggests they may not follow standard conquest protocols. Further investigation is required. The expedition was assembled within days, representatives from each apex species would travel to the human homeworld personally. This was unprecedented. Never before had the rulers of the galaxy felt the need to investigate a primitive species so thoroughly. Young-ho led the expedition aboard his flagship, the Starforge. The massive vessel was built to withstand the interior of dying stars, its hull glowing with contained nuclear fire. Alongside him traveled Yunji in her void ship, a craft that existed partially outside normal space. Minho's vessel flickered in and out of reality as it moved between quantum states, the journey to human space took 2 weeks at maximum speed. As they approached the outer edge of the solar system, their sensors began picking up detailed readings of the human homeworld. Initial scans confirmed Class 12 Deathworld status, reported Science Officer Daeyun from the Starforge's bridge. But sir, the readings are unusual. Some regions are showing characteristics that approach Class 15 conditions. Young-ho's internal fires flared with interest. Class 15 worlds were barely habitable even for his people, who had evolved in stellar cores. Show me the detailed analysis. The holographic display revealed a planet that defied easy classification. Vast oceans covered most of the surface, but they were not the calm seas found on garden worlds. These waters moved with tremendous force, creating waves that could destroy cities. Storm systems raged across the surface with wind speeds that would tear apart most structures. The atmospheric composition is highly corrosive, continued Daeyun. Oxygen levels that would be toxic to most species. The gravity is nearly twice galactic standard. Weather patterns include electrical storms with enough energy to power entire cities. But what truly caught their attention were the temperature variations. The polar regions showed readings cold enough to freeze most known substances solid. The equatorial deserts reached temperatures that would boil water instantly. Between these extremes, the planet experienced constant weather chaos. How do they survive in these conditions? Young-ho asked. Sir, that is the most disturbing part. They do not just survive. They have built cities in every biome. Permanent settlements exist from the frozen poles to the burning deserts. They appear to thrive in conditions that would kill most galactic species within minutes. The expedition entered orbit around Earth, and immediately their sensors were overwhelmed with activity. Thousands of artificial satellites surrounded the world. Space stations orbited at various distances. Ships moved constantly between the planet and its moon, where humans had established mining operations. Request permission to land, Young-ho ordered. We will investigate this world directly. The human response came quickly through diplomat He Jing, who had been appointed as their liaison. You are welcome to visit Earth? Dr. Jawan from our Xenobiology Institute has volunteered to give you a tour. We should warn you that our world may require environmental protection for your safety. Environmental protection. The rulers of the galaxy's most hostile worlds being warned that they might need protection on a Class 12 planet. The irony was not lost on any of them. They landed at a facility called the International Space Center, located in what humans called temperate climate. The moment they stepped outside their environmental suits, they understood why humans had offered warnings. The gravity hit them like a physical blow. Even Young-ho, whose people were born in the crushing depths of stellar cores, felt the weight pressing down on him. The air burned in their breathing apparatus, not from heat, but from the corrosive mixture of gases that humans somehow breathed naturally. Dr. Jawan greeted them at the landing site. She was a small human female who looked fragile enough to break in the wind. Yet she walked normally in gravity that made each step an effort for her visitors. Welcome to Earth, she said cheerfully. I hope your journey was comfortable. We have prepared several demonstrations to show you how our people live. The first stop was what Dr. Jiwan called a playground. Children played there, running and jumping in the crushing gravity as if it was nothing. They engaged in activities that would hospitalize adult Vorthok warriors. Games that involved high-speed collisions, falls from dangerous heights, and physical combat that seemed designed to cause injury. Do the young ones often get hurt in these activities? Asked Yunji, her dark energy pulsing with confusion. Sometimes. Dr. Jiwan replied casually. But children are quite resilient. A few bruises and cuts are considered part of normal development. The expedition watched in growing horror as human children routinely survived impacts that would shatter their bones. They bounced back from falls that would kill most adults of other species. They laughed and played in conditions that the galaxy's apex predators found barely tolerable. The next demonstration took place in what Dr. Jiwan called a swimming facility. Humans of all ages jumped into water and moved through it as if they belonged there, but the water itself was another shock. The liquid contains high levels of chlorine for purification, Dr. Jiwan explained. It helps prevent the growth of harmful bacteria, chlorine, a substance so corrosive that most species used it for industrial cleaning. Humans swam in it for recreation, but the real revelation came when Dr. Jiwan took them to observe human settlements in extreme environments. Through secure viewing areas, they watched humans working in Arctic research stations where the temperature was cold enough to instantly freeze most galactic species solid. How do they survive? Minho asked, his form flickering with distress as he watched humans moving normally in conditions that would kill him. Humans have remarkable adaptation abilities, Dr. Jiwan explained. We use clothing and shelter, but our bodies can also adjust to extreme conditions. Some of our people can work in temperatures ranging from -40 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius. The temperature range she described covered conditions from the frozen moons of gas giants to the burning surfaces of planets close to their suns. No single species in the galaxy could survive such extremes naturally. They visited mountain settlements where humans lived permanently at altitudes where the air was too thin for most beings to breathe. They observed desert cities where people thrived in heat that would cook the flesh of visiting aliens. They saw underwater habitats where humans worked at pressures that would crush starships. This is impossible, Young-ho said, his internal fires dimming with shock. No single species can adapt to such varied extreme conditions. Actually, Dr. Jiwan said with pride, humans are considered one of the most adaptable species on Earth. We are persistence hunters by evolution. We do not give up easily. She showed them recordings of human activities that the aliens initially dismissed as fictional entertainment. Humans climbing mountains for no strategic purpose, diving into crushing ocean depths for exploration, and voluntarily entering dangerous caves filled with toxic gases. Why do they do these things? Yunji asked. What purpose does it serve? We call them extreme sports, Dr. Jiwan explained. Humans enjoy challenging themselves against hostile environments. It helps us stay physically and mentally prepared for unexpected situations. The final shock came when they learned about human dietary habits. Dr. Jiwan offered them samples of common human foods and beverages. The expedition's sensors immediately identified the contents as various toxins and poisons. This substance would be fatal to most species, Minho observed, examining a cup of coffee. Caffeine is mildly stimulating for humans, Dr. Jiwan replied. We consume it regularly for mental alertness. She showed them spices that registered as chemical weapons on their scanners, alcoholic beverages that would serve as starship fuel for some species, foods so spicy that they triggered pain responses, yet humans consumed them for pleasure. As the day ended, the expedition members gathered in their ship to discuss what they had witnessed. The casual confidence that had defined their rule for millennia was nowhere to be found. They are not just surviving on this death world, Young-ho said quietly. They have mastered it completely. They treat conditions that would kill us as normal, living environments. Their adaptability exceeds anything in our database, Minho added. They do not just endure extreme conditions. They actively seek them out for entertainment. Unji's dark energy swirled with something that might have been fear. What have we discovered? What manner of beings are these humans? As they prepared to return to Apex space, each representative carried with them the disturbing knowledge that they had encountered something unprecedented. A species that did not just survive on a death world, but had made the entire planet into their playground. For the first time in 3,000 years, The apex predators of the galaxy wondered if they might have met their match. The news of humanity spread through galactic intelligence networks like wildfire. In the shadowy corridors of power across the Apex Dominion, heated debates raged about what to do with these strange beings from the edge of nowhere. Commander Tyke paced the war room of Terminus Prime, his claws leaving deep scratches in the metal floor. "They must be destroyed immediately," he growled to his assembled officers. "Any species that can survive conditions approaching Class 15 represents a potential threat to our dominance." But not everyone agreed. In the research facilities of the Titanforge Collective, scientists studied the human data with growing fascination. Their ability to adapt to extreme conditions could prove valuable if properly controlled. "We should capture specimens for study," suggested Chief Researcher Seung-jun during a secure communication with other Apex leaders. "Their biological adaptations might be useful for our expansion into previously uninhabitable systems." Meanwhile, humanity was not waiting for galactic politics to decide their fate. Captain Do-yeon commanded the human deep space reconnaissance vessel Pathfinder as it moved silently through the outer systems of Apex space. His mission was simple but dangerous: make contact with non-Apex species and learn about the true nature of galactic civilization. What he discovered horrified him. On the mining world of Kepler Station, Captain Do-yeon found the Gentle Ones. These peaceful beings looked like living crystals that could communicate through harmonic vibrations. They had once been free traders who traveled between star systems, sharing knowledge and culture. Now they were slaves. The quantum devourers had conquered their homeworld 50 years ago. The Gentle Ones' ability to process complex mathematical calculations made them valuable for mining operations. They were forced to work in conditions that slowly poisoned their crystalline bodies. "We have not seen the sky of our homeworld for 30 years, sang one of the Gentle Ones in harmonics that translated as pure sadness. "The devourers tell us we exist only to serve their empire." Captain Do-yeon felt anger building in his chest. This was wrong in ways that made his human sense of justice burn. "How many of your people are held in slavery?" "Millions across dozens of worlds. We are not the only ones. The apex species collect useful races like tools in a workshop." Over the following weeks, Captain Do-yeon made contact with other enslaved species. On the water world of Aquatica, he found the coral mines. These collective intelligences could process vast amounts of data simultaneously, making them perfect for managing the complex logistics of interstellar trade. The Vorthak had enslaved them to run their shipping networks. In the floating cities above the gas giant Nimbus, he discovered the wing dancers. Their people had evolved to fly in the dense atmosphere, making them excellent navigators and scouts. The Void Hunters used them to explore dangerous regions of space where normal ships could not go. On the heavy gravity world of Granite Prime, he met the Stone Singers. These massive beings could survive crushing gravity and toxic atmospheres. That would kill most species instantly. The Titanforge Collective forced them to mine rare minerals from the cores of hostile planets. Each species told the same story. They had been conquered not because they were weak, but because their unique abilities made them valuable to their apex masters. They lived in conditions designed to break their spirits while maximizing their usefulness, but Captain Do-yeon brought them something they had not experienced in generations: hope. "My people believe that all intelligent beings deserve freedom," he told a gathering of enslaved species leaders in a hidden meeting aboard his ship. "We want to help you." The response was immediate skepticism. The winged dancer representative, a graceful being named Yaman, spoke for many when he said, "Every species claims to want to help until they become strong enough to enslave us themselves. Why should humans be different?" Captain Do-yeon understood their distrust. "Because we have seen what your masters can do, and we believe it is wrong. We do not want to rule you. We want to free you." To prove his point, he shared human technology freely, medical supplies that could help heal the damage done by years of abuse, communication devices that allowed the enslaved species to coordinate with each other. Most importantly, he shared human engineering principles. Back on Earth, scientist De Jong worked frantically in her laboratory. She had been studying captured Apex technology brought back by reconnaissance missions. What she discovered was revolutionary human engineering, developed under Earth's extreme conditions, proved remarkably adaptable to alien systems. Where other species required specialized equipment for different environments, human-modified technology worked across a much broader range of conditions. Our environmental suits designed for Earth's Arctic regions work perfectly on Vorthak ice worlds, she reported to the Earth Defense Council. Our desert survival gear functions in Titan Forge heat chambers. We have accidentally created universal survival technology. More importantly, she had learned to reverse engineer and improve Apex equipment. Their weapons were powerful but designed for specific conditions. Human modifications made them work in any environment. The resistance network grew rapidly as word spread through hidden channels. Species that had been enemies under Apex rule began working together for the first time in centuries. The gentle ones provided computational support for resistance operations. The winged dancers served as fast couriers between systems. The stone singers built hidden supply depots in locations too hostile for Apex forces to easily search. At the center of it all was diplomat Hejin, now serving as the coordinator for what became known as the Liberation Alliance. She established the first truly democratic council in galactic history, where every species had an equal voice regardless of their military strength. We are not building another empire, she told the assembled representatives during a secret meeting in an abandoned asteroid mining station. We are creating something new, a civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. The concept was so foreign to galactic politics that many species initially struggled to understand it. For thousands of years, the only models they had known were ruler and ruled, predator and prey, but humans demonstrated their commitment through action. When plague struck a coral mine colony, human medical ships arrived with supplies and doctors. When Titanforge raiders attacked a winged dancer settlement, human warships drove them off and asked for nothing in return. Slowly, the enslaved species began to believe that these strange beings from the Deathworld actually meant what they said. The Apex Dominion remained largely unaware of the growing resistance network. Their intelligence services were designed to detect military threats, not coordinated civilian uprising. Besides, the idea that lesser species could effectively organize against them was so ridiculous that most Apex leaders dismissed early reports as misinformation. Commander Tyke received fragmentary intelligence about unusual activity in the outer systems, but his attention was focused on the human homeworld. Increase surveillance of Earth, he ordered. If these humans are planning something, we will crush them before they can act. But he was looking in the wrong direction. The real threat was not building on Earth. It was spreading through every enslaved world in the galaxy, carried by beings who had finally found something they had never dared hope for. Before the possibility of freedom. As resistance cells formed on hundreds of worlds, they shared a common message that spread like wildfire through the slave populations. Humanity had arrived, and they were not like the other predator species. They genuinely wanted to help. For the first time in millennia, the downtrodden masses of the galaxy began to believe that change was possible. And in the hidden workshops of 1,000 worlds, they began preparing for the day when they would no longer kneel before their Apex masters. The liberation of the galaxy had begun. The war began with an act of cruelty that shocked even the hardened veterans of the Apex Dominion. Commander Tyke had grown increasingly frustrated with reports of unusual activity in the outer systems. His intelligence officers spoke of coordinated movements among slave populations, increased communication between previously isolated colonies, and disturbing rumors about human involvement in resistance activities. Enough, he declared during a meeting of his senior staff. We will send a message that the galaxy will not forget. Find me a target that will demonstrate the price of defying our rule. The target was a human relief convoy carrying medical supplies to a plague-stricken refugee settlement on the border world of Haven's Edge. The convoy consisted of 3 Transport ships escorted by a single human warship under the command of Commander Seon-ho. Intelligence reports indicated that the refugees were a mixed group of escaped slaves from various species. In Tyke's mind, this made them perfect examples of what happened to those who defied the Apex Dominion. "Destroy the convoy," Tyke ordered. "Leave no survivors. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who harbor fugitive slaves." The Vorthik task force that intercepted the human convoy outnumbered them 20-1. Admiral Yunwoo, commanding the Vorthak flagship Skullbreaker, opened communications with the humans and demanded their immediate surrender. Commander Seon-ho appeared on the screen, his face calm despite the impossible odds. Behind him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency that spoke of extensive training and preparation. "I cannot comply with that order," Seon-ho replied. "These ships carry medical supplies for civilians suffering from a plague outbreak. We will not abandon them." Admiral Hyunwoo laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You are vastly outnumbered, human. Your single escort vessel cannot possibly protect those transports. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." "We appreciate the offer," Seon-ho said with what might have been a smile. "But humans do not abandon civilians in need. If you want those supply ships, you will have to go through us." What followed became known throughout the galaxy as the Battle of Haven's Gate. It was the first major engagement between human and Apex forces, and it changed everything both sides thought they knew about warfare. The human escort ship, the Resilience, was smaller than any of the Vorthik battleships. Its weapons were less powerful, its armor was thinner, and by every conventional measure it should have been destroyed within minutes. But conventional measures had never applied to humanity. Commander Seon-ho had trained his entire life for this moment, not just in military tactics, but in the human art of survival against impossible odds. His ship had been designed by engineers who understood that sometimes you had to fight in conditions where everything was trying to kill you. The Resilience moved through the Vorthik formation like a dancer, using its superior maneuverability to avoid the heavy weapons that could destroy it in a single hit. Its crew, adapted to high-stress environments, functioned effectively under combat conditions that would have paralyzed most other species. More importantly, they fought with a desperate creativity that came from evolving on a world where adaptability meant the difference between life and death. When the Resilience's main weapons were damaged, the crew rigged mining charges as improvised missiles. When their shields failed, they used debris fields as cover. When their engines were hit, they used the gravity well of a nearby moon to slingshot around for attack runs. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Vorthek ships, designed for overwhelming firepower in straightforward engagements, struggled to adapt to the humans' unconventional tactics. Every time they thought they had cornered the Resilience, it would do something unexpected and escape, but the real shock came when reinforcements arrived. Not human reinforcements. The Liberation Alliance had been watching, and they refused to let humanity fight alone. Wing Dancer fighters appeared first, their graceful ships dancing between the massive Vorthik battleships like birds harassing a predator. They were followed by Gentle One vessels that used harmonic weapons to disrupt Vorthik targeting systems. Stone Singer heavy cruisers emerged from asteroid fields where they had been hiding, their thick armor allowing them to trade blows with the larger enemy ships. For the first time in 3,000 years, the enslaved species of the galaxy fought back. Admiral Yunwoo watched in growing disbelief as his overwhelming numerical advantage began to crumble. His ships were individually superior to anything the Alliance could field, but they were designed for conquest, not coordination. Each Vorthik captain fought for personal glory, while their enemies worked together like parts of a single organism. "Impossible," he growled as a Wing Dancer squadron crippled one of his cruisers with coordinated strikes. "Slave species cannot fight like this." But they were no longer slaves. They were free beings fighting for their homes, their families, and their future. And they had learned from humanity that sometimes the impossible was just another word for difficult. The Battle of Haven's Gate ended with the withdrawal of the surviving Vorthik ships. They had lost over half their force against an enemy they had expected to crush easily. Worse, the battle had been broadcast across the galaxy by hidden resistance transmitters. Every enslaved being in Apex space saw that the mighty Vortha could be defeated. Every oppressed colony learned that their masters were not invincible. The spark of rebellion that had been smoldering for centuries suddenly burst into open flame within days. Uprisings began on dozens of worlds. The careful network that Captain Doyun and Diplomat Haijin had built activated across the galaxy. Supply depots that had been secretly stockpiling weapons opened their doors to freedom fighters. Communication networks that had been hidden for years emerged to coordinate resistance activities. The Apex Dominion found itself fighting a war unlike anything in their experience. This was not conquest against a weaker enemy. This was a galaxy-wide rebellion by species that had finally found the courage to fight back. Commander Tyke called for total mobilization of Apex forces. The Titan Forge Collective deployed their Starkiller weapons. The Void Hunters emerged from the darkness between galaxies to hunt down resistance leaders. The Quantum Devourers phased through reality to strike at hidden rebel bases, but for every resistance cell they destroyed, 3 more appeared. For every world they recaptured, 2 more declared independence. The tactics that had worked for 3 millennia against divided, terrified populations proved ineffective against a coordinated alliance that no longer feared death more than slavery. The war spread across hundreds of star systems. Human tactical advisors worked with local resistance fighters to plan operations that maximized their strengths while avoiding direct confrontation with superior Apex forces. Human engineers helped design weapons and equipment that could be built in hidden factories using locally available materials. Most importantly, humans shared their greatest weapon. Not their technology or their tactics, but their philosophy. The belief that every intelligent being deserved freedom and dignity. The conviction that no one had the right to rule over others through force and fear. Admiral Soman, formerly captain of the New Horizon, now commanded the Combined Liberation Fleet from her flagship Freedom's Dawn. The ship had been built using technology shared between a dozen species, each contributing their unique knowledge to create something greater than any of them could have built alone. Status report from all sectors, she requested as her diverse crew worked around her. Gentle Ones managed the complex logistics of coordinating fleets across multiple star systems. Wing Dancers served as rapid couriers between widely separated forces. Stone Singers operated weapon systems that could function in any environment. 17 systems have declared independence in the past week, reported Communications Officer Minjae, a former Coral Mine slave who had volunteered for the dangerous job of managing battlefield communications. Apex forces are spread thin, trying to contain the uprisings. Any word from the Terminus system? Soman asked. Intelligence suggests the Apex leadership is preparing for a final stand. They are recalling forces from across the galaxy to defend their capital. Soman nodded. She had expected this. The Apex Dominion would not surrender easily. They would make their last stand at the heart of their empire, betting everything on one massive battle. But that was exactly what the Liberation Alliance had been preparing for. After months of guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run tactics, and coordinated uprisings, they were ready for the final confrontation. The galaxy held its breath as 2 philosophies prepared to clash. On one side, the Apex Dominion with their belief that strength gave them the right to rule over all lesser beings. On the other, the Liberation Alliance with their conviction that freedom was the birthright of every intelligent species. The outcome would determine the future of galactic civilization for millennia to come. The final battle for the galaxy began in the Terminus system, where the heart of the Apex Dominion had beaten for 3,000 years. Every remaining warship of the 4 Apex species gathered around their fortress world, creating the largest military concentration in galactic history. Commander Tyke stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the sensor displays with grim satisfaction. Over 5,000 Apex vessels formed defensive lines around Terminus Prime. The orbital fortresses bristled with weapons that could crack planets. The system's asteroid fields had been converted into massive weapon platforms. "Let them come," he growled to his assembled fleet commanders. "We will show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the natural order." But Lieutenant Jinwoo, now serving as Tyke's tactical advisor, felt a growing unease as he studied the approaching Liberation fleet. The Alliance forces numbered only half as many ships, and most of them were converted civilian vessels or captured. Apex equipment. By every military doctrine he knew, they should be easily defeated, yet something about their formation patterns disturbed him. The Allied ships did not move like separate fleets forced to work together. They moved like a single organism with many parts, each perfectly coordinated with the others. Admiral Soman commanded the Liberation Fleet from the Bridge of Freedom's dawn. Around her, representatives from dozens of species worked together with an efficiency that would have amazed their former masters. The bridge itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, designed to accommodate the needs of different species while maximizing their combined effectiveness. "All fleets report ready," announced Wing Dancer Flight Coordinator Kyun from his specialized navigation station. His people's natural ability to navigate three-dimensional space made them perfect for coordinating the complex maneuvers required for multi-species fleet operations. "Quantum generators at full power," reported Gentle One Engineer Sunwoo. The crystalline being's harmonic voice resonated through the ship's communication system as she managed the exotic energy systems that powered their most advanced weapons. "Stone Singer heavy units in position," added Tactical Officer Minho, his massive frame adapted to withstand the crushing forces of high-gravity combat. His people's natural toughness made them ideal for operating the heavy weapons that could punch through Apex armor. Dr. Jiwan, now serving as the fleet's strategic coordinator, studied the tactical displays with the same careful attention she had once given to xenobiology research. "Enemy formations suggest they are planning a traditional defensive engagement. They expect us to attack their strongest positions directly. Then we will not give them what they expect," Admiral Soman replied. "Implement Swarm Protocol." The Swarm Protocol was humanity's answer to the Apex Dominion's greatest strength. For millennia, the Apex species had won through individual superiority. Each of their ships was stronger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything their enemies could field. Their tactics were based on the assumption that superior force would always triumph, but humanity had learned a different lesson on their harsh homeworld. Sometimes survival required working together. Against a threat too large for any individual to face alone, the Liberation Fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each one perfectly coordinated through quantum communication networks. Instead of attacking the strongest Apex positions, they struck at weak points and support systems. When the enemy concentrated forces to meet one threat, they found that three more had appeared behind them. The battle raged across the entire star system. Titan-forged collective ships, designed to survive in the hearts of dying stars, found themselves overwhelmed by coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Their individual firepower was devastating, but they could not be everywhere at once. Void hunter vessels, masters of stealth and ambush, discovered that their opponents had learned to use their own tactics against them. Human-trained scouts anticipated their movements, while Stone Singer heavy cruisers waited in ambush positions that should have been impossible to reach. Quantum Devourer ships tried to use their dimensional phasing abilities to escape concentrated attacks, only to find that Gentle One quantum calculators had predicted their movements and positioned forces at their emergence points. But the real battle was not just military. It was philosophical. Lieutenant Jinwoo watched from the command center of the Eternal Dominion as the carefully ordered lines of the Apex formation began to break down. His own commanders were making decisions based on personal glory and individual achievement. Each captain fought for their own honor, even when cooperation would have been more effective. Meanwhile, the Liberation Fleet grew stronger as the battle continued. When human ships took damage, Wing Dancer repair craft darted in to provide assistance. When Gentle One vessels found themselves outgunned, Stone Singer heavy units moved to support them. Every species contributed their strengths while others covered their weaknesses. "This is impossible," Commander Tyke raged as another of his battle groups was destroyed by coordinated enemy action. "They are inferior species, they cannot fight like this." But they were not inferior anymore. They were free beings fighting for their homes and their future. And they had learned from humanity that together they could face any challenge. The turning point came when a massive Titanforge battleship, the Starburner, found itself surrounded by dozens of smaller allied vessels. The ship's commander, Admiral Young-ho, prepared to fight to the death rather than surrender. But then something unprecedented happened. Lieutenant Jinwoo opened a direct communication channel to the surrounded vessel. "Admiral Young-ho," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the battlefield. "I offer you a choice. You can fight until your ship is destroyed and your crew is dead, or you can choose a different path." Young-ho's molten form blazed with anger. "I do not surrender to inferior beings." "Then do not surrender to us," Jinwoo replied. "Surrender to the idea that there might be a better way to live than through domination and fear." For a long moment, silence filled the communication channel. Around the Starburner, the Liberation Fleet waited. They had the firepower to destroy the massive vessel, but they hoped for something better. "What guarantee do I have that my people will be treated with honor?" Young-ho asked finally. "The same guarantee we offer to every species," Admiral Solomon said, joining the communication. "Freedom to choose your own path, dignity for all your people, and the chance to help build something better than what we are destroying today." Slowly, the weapons of the Starburner powered down. The surrender of Young-ho's flagship sent shockwaves through the Apex forces. If the mighty Titanforge Collective could choose peace over destruction, what did that mean for the rest of them? One by one, other Apex commanders began to reconsider their positions. Some, like Commander Tyke, fought to the bitter end, refusing to accept that their way of life was ending. But others chose to lay down their weapons and face an uncertain future rather than certain death. The Battle of Terminus ended not with total destruction, but with negotiation. For the first time in galactic history, a war concluded with the victors offering mercy and rehabilitation to their defeated enemies. The galactic cooperation was established. 6 months later, on the neutral world of New Terra, the Constitution was written by representatives from over 200 species, each contributing their unique perspectives to create a government based on voluntary association and mutual aid. Not all of the former Apex species accepted the new order. Commander Tyke and his most loyal followers retreated to the galactic edge, where they established isolated colonies and vowed to rebuild their strength. But they were no longer the dominant force in galactic politics. The cooperation faced many challenges in its early years. Species that had been enemies for millennia had to learn to work together. Economic systems based on slavery and exploitation had to be rebuilt around cooperation and fair trade. Worlds devastated by centuries of oppression needed time and resources to heal, but humanity was there to help, just as they had promised. Human engineers shared their knowledge freely, helping to rebuild damaged worlds and establish new colonies. Human doctors worked alongside alien colleagues to develop medical treatments for species that had been denied proper healthcare under Apex rule. Human teachers established schools where children from dozens of species learned together. Most importantly, humans shared their greatest gift. Not their technology or their resources, but their unwavering belief that every intelligent being deserved freedom, dignity, and the chance to reach their full potential. Lieutenant Jinwoo, now serving as the Cooperation's Minister of Reconciliation, often walked through the parks of New Terra where children from dozens of species played together. It still amazed him to see young Vorthic learning peaceful games from human children, or tiny wing dancers teaching gravity-adapted stone singers how to appreciate the beauty of flight. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still problems to solve, still those who yearned for the old days of simple domination. But for the first time in recorded history, the majority of galactic civilization was based on cooperation rather than conquest. In a small garden on New Terra, a human child named Minji explained to her, Vorthak friend how her grandmother used to climb mountains on Earth just for the joy of reaching the summit. The young Vorthak listened with fascination, trying to understand why anyone would choose to face danger when they could avoid it. My grandmother said that the most important thing was not whether you could survive. Minji explained as they watched ships from a dozen different species arriving at the orbital port above them. The important thing was how you chose to live. And across the galaxy, billions of beings were finally free to make that choice for themselves. The age of the Apex Dominion was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And at the heart of it all, humanity continued to do what they did best. Not conquering or ruling, but helping others discover that survival was not enough. Everyone deserved the chance to truly live.